Good morning, AP Music Theory world. I'm Dr. Eder, and I'm very happy to be with you to discuss music theory, or what I like to call it, music literacy. Before we begin this morning, I know there may be some questions about why we're beginning these lessons with Units 7 and 8 in the course and exam description. Okay.
Terry, you there?
Am I back?
You're back, Terry.
Am I live?
You are.
Okay. Sorry about that little bit of misfire. We are talking about music theory, as I said, and I wanted to bring out that the colleges have asked that all of our AP Music Theory students study these topics, even if they're not going to be on the exam. Colleges are supporting AP students this year by allowing this more flexible approach to the exam, where the exam is going to focus on a lesser amount of content than in other years. But in turn, they've asked that we learn all of the material. So we're going to end the course this year and help you do that by taking up some of these topics that maybe you hadn't gotten to yet in your course. In a week or so, then after we've covered these ending parts of the course, we'll be posting a full schedule of review topics for the future remainder, so you can choose which topics you want to review with us and so on. So with that said, I'm going to share my screen here, and I'm going to start this PowerPoint. And there is music theory. So let's begin today. Again, my name is Terry Eder. I teach at Lovejoy High School in Lucas, Texas. And so for our warm up this morning, and we're going to kind of do this every day, the other teacher, Mrs. Mindy Foote, will be with you tomorrow, and then I'll be back the following day, and so on. But let's listen to a piece of music this morning. And I have to tell you that this is an electronic version, so with apologies to the pianists out there, let's listen and watch. Okay, so with this, let's begin this lesson. And today we're going to take up where hopefully a lot of teachers left off when we had to close the schools. And so this is topic 7.1, tonicization through secondary dominant chords. And you can look down in the left-hand corner of that page of the CED and notice the learning objective talks about identifying and describing tonicization in both performed music and notated music. And the essential knowledge in this topic, the EKs as we'll call them, begins talking about the fact that pieces of music exist in a certain key, which we'll call the primary key. However, scale degrees or chords other than the tonic may be made to sound as if they are temporary tonics. And this is called tonicization. So in other words, we're tonicizing, making tonic a different key just for a moment. It's like a screenshot, really. As it says there in the EK, tonicization possesses a fleeting quality due to its relatively brief duration and the lack of a clear cadence in the new key. Tonicization is a local harmonic event that does not change the primary key of the music. And one thing that you will find out immediately if you haven't talked about secondary function yet is that usually what signals secondary function is an altered scale degree. In other words, a note that has an accidental on it. As we go on with the essential knowledge, we're going to find that the most common way to affect tonicization is through the use of a secondary dominant or applied dominant chord. And even then, the most common one is a 5 of 5. And in this EK, they give you a little example. And I wrote the example out for us to look at in a form that I use with my students. And it looks like this. So we're talking about in the key of C major, a secondary dominant chord. And it's the 5/7 of 5. And I often talk about that diagonal at the beginning of talking about secondary dominance. The chord on the right-hand side of the diagonal is the chord that is going to be tonicized, the chord that we're tonicizing. So in this particular case, we're tonicizing the 5 chord in the key of C major, and we're going to think in the key of that chord as if it were a tonic chord. So the 5 chord in the key of C, C, D, E, F, G, is a G, B, D chord. And so now let's think like that would be the tonic chord. And so we're thinking in the key of G major, okay? And G major has 1 sharp, correct? So all you have to do in this format that I have written here is that when you figure out what the chord on the right of the diagonal is, that's the chord that will be in the primary key, the key of the piece, then you simply take the 5th of that chord, G, A, B, C, D, and move that D to the left. And actually, it becomes the root of the secondary dominant chord because it's going to be the dominant in G major. And so we spell that chord, D, F sharp, A, C, and you can see immediately that is, if you've studied 7th chords, that's a dominant 7th chord. So D to F sharp to A, that forms a major triad. And then D up to C is a minor 7th. And I'll show you a couple of other ways that you can look at this a little bit later in the lesson. Then, since this is a root position 5/7, D is the bass note. And then I just arbitrarily wrote the other notes of the chord up in the score. You can write those, the soprano, alto, and tenor notes in any order you would want to up there. I put C in the tenor, and I put F sharp in the alto, and I put A in the soprano. So that's the example that they give. Let's now take a look at the piece that we listened to earlier. and the Schubert piece, one of my favorite little, very short pieces. So in this piece, we're going to analyze, first of all, the first half of the piece. And if you remember seeing the score, here are the repeat sign, and this first section plays 2 times. So let's take a look and analyze this using the Roman numeral analysis system and see what the harmonic progression is in this piece. So you can see that it has an anacrusis at the very beginning, that E flat to the D flat. And then we go to the first measure. And I like this piece to begin secondary function with, because each measure in the piece is 1 chord. So let's look at this first chord. And in that particular chord, we find that we have these notes. So you see that there's an A flat half note in the bass that carries through the measure. And then in the right hand up there, there's a C, there's an E flat, there's another A flat, there's back down to C again. And then there's an A flat and C. And then the last 2 notes, G and B flat, are not in this chord, because also down in the bass clef, you've got an E flat and an A flat and another E flat and A flat. So those notes G and B flat are what we would call embellishing tones or non-chord tones. And you can see over here in the score that they go between A flat C and F A flat. So they would be called passing tones. Okay, and that's a 1 chord, very, very much the way common practice music often begins, on a 1 chord. The next measure, the second measure, would be a D flat F A flat chord. And you can go through the notes. There's D flats and A flats in the bass clef. There's F and A flat in the treble clef. And then you run into that G and B flat again. So more embellishing tones, non-chord tones. And in this particular case, because they go between F A flat and back to F A flat, and they move up by step and back down by step, these would be called neighbor tones. And these are, you can add a modifier, these are upper neighbor tones. And in this case, A, B, C, D flat. D flat is the 4th scale degree. And so the chord built on the 4th scale degree is Roman numeral 4. Going to the third measure, this is a B flat, D flat, F chord. And you can look B flat in the bass, F and B flat in the bass, D flat, F, B flat, D flat, and then B flat and D flat. And then we come to those passing tones again, that A flat and C, those are not in the B flat, D flat, F chord. And so consequently, they are passing tones in this particular measure going to the next measure. And if you go to B flat, A flat, B flat, that's the 2nd scale degree that this chord is built on. So it's Roman numeral 2. And by the way, 4s love to go to 2 in this style of music. Okay, the third measure is an E flat, G, B flat chord. And that should kind of come out to you real quickly that A, B, C, D, E, that's the 5th scale degree. And so this E flat, G, B flat, we've got those upper neighbor tones again, the embellishing tones, the A flat and the C, which are not members of the chord. And so this is a 5 chord in the key of A flat major. Going on, the next chord is again E flat, G, B flat, but now it also has a D flat. So Schubert has made this into a 7th chord. By the way, I always like to tell students that in this particular case, the way this is written in the score, Whoops, I went too fast there. This is right here, this interval of the second between the D flat and the E flat. That's signaling that this could be a seventh chord, and it says that E flat is the root of this chord. So sometimes if you're struggling looking in a measure and trying to figure out what all the notes and everything are, and you see a second like that, you can probably spell a seventh chord beginning on that note. And in this particular case, if you look at the notes in parentheses there, there's a D flat and an F. Well, D flat's in the chord, but F isn't. And then if you look at the next eighth notes, there's a C and an E flat. Well, E flat is in the chord, but C isn't. I really hear these as not chord tones, but non-chord tones. And so you may, when we listen again, listen and see if you hear that the way I'm talking about it. And this is a 5/7 chord, which is expanding that chord into a more tension in the chord as we prolong dominant here. The sixth measure there is going to be all the notes in that chord are A flat, C, and E flat. So this is an A flat, C, E flat chord, but the position of the chord is different because you can see that the fifth of the chord is the lowest note, and then the other notes are above. And so this is a second inversion chord, and it has the notes of the one chord. So I typically designate this as a 1/6/4. It's a cadential 6/4. It has a special name, and it's called a cadential 6/4 because it comes before the two chords of a cadence. And also, it is a second inversion chord that could also be a lot of college teachers are going to designate this chord as a 5/6/4-5/3. I like to keep it as in the figured bass idea that if you count up from E flat, E, F, G, A flat is 4, E, F, G, A, B, C is 6. And that just makes it a lot simpler oftentimes for us to remember. So I'm going to designate it as a 1/6/4 chord. Still a prolongation of dominant, however, because it functions as a dominant function. And then we go to measure 7, and once again we're back to that 5/7 chord. This has that F up there, which is a non-chord tone in this style of music from the common practice. And then this ends, of course, that's a 5/7 again. So this is a strong prolongation of dominant leading up to the A flat, C, E flat chord, which is the one chord. So let's take a listen to this first half of the piece once again. So you can see that in this particular first half of the piece, there are no notes that aren't diatonic. Everything is diatonic. All of the notes are from the key of A flat major, the scale of A flat major. So let's go on now and let's take a look at the second half of the piece. And as we scan through this piece, I love the words same, similar, and different. And I think if you compare this to the first half of the piece, there are some things that may be the same, but I see a lot of things that look similar, but they're not the same. But they're also not totally different. What I do see immediately is an altered tone, an E natural. And I also see a D natural a couple of bars down the line there. So those are notes that are not diatonic to the key of A flat major. So they're not a part of the primary key. So you have to start thinking immediately, well, if they're not in A flat major, what are they doing here? So first of all, I like to, if I see an altered tone like that, I want to go to the next measure where I can see there are no altered tones. And I can identify the notes of this measure as F, A flat, and C. The G and B flat, once again, he's used these as non-chord tones. And once again, they're non-chord tones here. This is a accented passing tone, what I would call an accented passing tone in this particular measure. So this is an F, A flat, C chord. So if you hearken back to my example that I made in C major with the 5, 7 of 5, okay, this is F, A, C. So let's see if we spell the chord in the previous measure. It is a C. If we start on the 5th of the F, A flat, C chord, C, E natural, there's the altered tone, G, and B flat. Those are the notes that we have. And then those embellishing tones on the 3rd beat of the measure. So if you think about this particular thing, yes, this is the dominant in F minor, F major, pardon me. This is F minor. Because it's A, B, C, D, E, F, the 6th scale degree. So with this chord, we find that it is the 5, 7 of 6 because the F, A flat, C chord is the 6th chord. So we have tonicized, Schubert has tonicized the 6th chord and made this sound like 5 to 1, those two measures, in the key of F minor. Let's go on. Now we've got that D natural in the next measure. And so I'm going to go to bar 12, and I find that bar 12 is an E flat, G, B flat chord. So could it be that we're tonicizing the key of E flat major in this case? Well, let's look at the chord with the D natural. All of the notes in there, there's B flat, D natural, F, A flat, and then of course those embellishing tones on the 3rd beat. This is a B flat, D natural with the altered tone, F, A flat, and so the E flat, G, B flat in bar 12 is a 5 chord in the key of A flat. So this is the most famous secondary dominant. This is a 5, 7 of 5, resolving to a 5 chord in bar 12. This is the most common secondary dominant. And then when you look at this, you begin to see some similarities and maybe even something that is the same. Let's listen to this second half now once. Now try and listen to this. I'll sing. 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 5, 5, 1. So you can, you can see that it ends with actually the same thing as we saw in the first half. If you start right here on this 5 chord, actually this 5, 7 chord right there, you're going to look, and that's exactly the same. The end is exactly the same like that. So let's, I hope that I've shown how those secondary dominants work in a piece. And let's listen to the whole piece one more time. Okay, and so now we're going to check for understanding. So this is a worksheet that I use with my students, and it has worked really well to help students figure out how to write secondary dominants. And so I want to show you how the worksheet goes. And if you look at the instructions up there, it says, write the following secondary dominant chords in 4 parts on the staves provided. Below the staff, write the letter names with accidentals for each of the chords in root position. First, write the resolution chord on the lower 3 blanks to the right. So you can see that in this first example, I'm in the key of B flat major. I wrote the key signature in up there. And we want to write the 5/7 of 5 in the key of B flat major. Okay, so I took and analyzed the chord on the right side of the diagonal, the 5 chord in the key of B flat, B, C, D, E, F. So that is the F, A, C chord. And by the way, one thing that I haven't said yet, with secondary dominants, the way we write those Roman numerals, on the left side of the diagonal is always a 5 chord. We can't say always very often in music, but in this particular case, on the left side of the diagonal is always a 5 chord. It's either a major 5 or a 5/7 chord. And it could be in an inversion, but like it could be a 5/6/5 or a 5/4/3 or a 5/4/2. It could be that. But right now we're writing in root position a 5/7 of 5. So we've written the resolution chord on the 3 blanks to the right. Now all you do is move that 5th of the F chord to the left. And so the root of the 5/7 of 5 becomes C. And so then we're going to write the secondary dominant chord there. C, our altered tone is going to be E natural, G, and B flat. And of course, the reason the E natural is there is because if we think in the key of the 5 chord, F major only has 1 flat, so B flat has 2 flats, and so we're naturalizing the E flat and making it E natural. And then G and B flat. So then we're going to circle the bass note, and indicated by the Roman numeral, this is root position. And then we're going to write the chord in its proper position on the staff. And finally, if the secondary chord is a 7th chord, all I ask students to do at the beginning is be sure you resolve the chordal 7th down by step. There are some other things about the resolution of the chord that we'll talk about in another lesson. But basically, I just want to be sure that you know how to resolve that 7th chord down by step. And so consequently, I wrote C in the bass first because you don't have a choice about that. It's a root position chord. And then the soprano, alto, and tenor parts, as we call them, you can write those notes up there any way you like. So for example, I chose to write the chordal 7th, as it's called, in the tenor, and I did resolve it down by step in the next chord. And then I wrote E natural in the alto, and I made sure to put that natural sign on that note. And I wrote G in the soprano. Let's look at another one. Actually, three more. And I already wrote all of these out for you. So the second one is in the key of D major, two sharps in the key signature, F and C. And we're writing the 5, 6, 5. That's a first inversion seventh chord of 5. And so the 5 chord in D is D, E, F, G, A, built on A, the dominant scale degree. And the chord is A, C sharp, E. We take the fifth of that chord and we move that note to the left in our formatting here. And we write the 5, 6, 5. So this is a dominant seventh chord, an E, G sharp, B major triad, and E up to D is a minor seventh. You can also think about this a different way if you want to. For instance, if you want to do thirds, E to G sharp, major third, G sharp to B, minor third, B to D, minor third, so major, minor, minor. But most people, most textbooks would call this a major minor seventh chord. And secondary dominants are always either a major triad, if it just asks for a triad, and sometimes you'll see this in music, or it asks for a dominant seventh chord, a major minor seventh chord. And so once you figure out what the chord is that's going to be tonicized, you can take the dominant of that chord and just write a dominant seventh, a major triad or a dominant seventh chord, and you've got it done. And then up here, since it's a first inversion seventh chord, first thing I did was I wrote G sharp in the bass, then I put E in the soprano, I put B in the tenor, and there's the chordal seventh, D, and then I resolved it down by step to C sharp. The third one is in C minor, and so 3 flats in the key signature, B flat, E flat, and A flat. The 6th chord in the key of C minor, C, D, E, F, G, A flat. And so this is an A flat, C, E flat, a major chord. 6 is normally a major chord in minor keys. And then I move the 5th of that chord to the left, the E flat. It's a root position chord again. So I circled the E flat for the bass note. And then I wrote a dominant 7th chord. E flat, G, B flat is a major triad. E flat up to D flat is a minor 7th. And there's my 5, 7 of 6. And of course, you could also think in the key. The key of A flat major has 4 flats in it, and that's where the D flat comes from. So the altered tone is the chordal 7th this time. And then finally, we've got one in A major, and the one in A major is a 5, 4, 3 of 2. 4, 3 means it's a second inversion. And so the 2 chord in the key of A, F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp, is B, D, F sharp, 2 minor. And I moved the 5th of that chord, F sharp, to the left. I wrote a dominant 7th in the key of the B minor. You know, there is an B minor, there is an A sharp, because it would be the leading tone in the key of A, right? And so there, in the key of B, pardon me. And so this is an F sharp, A sharp, C sharp, E chord. I hope that this has helped you to maybe get a format for being able to write and later on identify secondary dominant chords. And I've given you some to practice on, and then the next time I see you, we will go over these. And the instructions, the steps are: write the following secondary dominant chords. Number 1, I actually forgot and wrote those in for you already. So you got it. You've got the key signatures already. Number 2, write the letter names for the tonicized chord on the lower 3 blanks to the right. 3, write the letter names for the secondary dominant chord on the upper blanks on the left. 4, circle the bass note of the secondary dominant chord. Step 5, write the notes for the secondary dominant chord in the staff. And 6, all you have to do in this particular exercise is resolve that chordal 7th. And so I gave you 4 of them. All of them are in major. And we've got a 5-7 of 5 in G, a 5-6-5 of 2 minor in F, a 5-4-3 of 5 in A, and a 5-7 of 4 in B flat. And so hopefully you'll have a chance to work through those. Shouldn't take you all that long. And the next time at the beginning of my lesson, I will show you the answers and how we get those. And finally, before we go today, since I'm from Texas, here's a good old country style song for you to enjoy and practice. So get ready for karaoke with the dominant 7th song. This is the Salty Ray song by David Newman. I love to sing this. I always sing. I hope to see you again soon. Here is Salty Ray Fa song.
This is a 1 chord and a 5 in first inversion, then a 6, a passing 1-6-4, then 4. But this song might get boring, and you'd probably start ignoring me if I tried naming every single chord. But there's 1 chord that's terrific, and its function is specific, and it hangs around in cadences for fun. With solfege we can state it, if we just arpeggiate it. Yes, Salty Ray Fa is a dominant 7 and brings us home to 1. Of course the 4 chord, Fa La Do, can be pleasant to the ear. Then there's 5-7 of 5, Re Fi La Do. That's a chord we're gonna learn about more next year. We're back to 1 now, and there's that 5 in first inversion, just repeating what we'd played when we'd begun. And this path that we have charted is gonna finish what we started, 'cause Salty Ray Fa is a dominant 7, which brings us home to, oh no, that cadence was deceptive. It went to minor 6 instead of 1. That sort of trick can be effective at making things last longer when we thought that we were done. But here we are again and moving toward the finish, and I think this time we will not wait in vain. 'Cause I'm tired of extending it, I'm ready for the ending. And Salty Ray Fa is our dominant 7 and brings us home again. Yes, Salty Ray Fa is our dominant 7 and brings us home again. Fa mi so so ti do. Woo!
All right, Terry, thank you.
On the first day of Christmas, I played some harmony. I used to establish the key.